people and it doesn't work. Yeah. Really we've had an increased focus on this year and then certainly for next year on co-teaching and inclusive practices in our classrooms. So a very traditional model of the traditional paradigm around students who are struggling, particularly those with special needs, was that there was a separate space for many of those students to learn the skills away from their general education classmates and peers. And research has shown that for most students, that's not an effective methodology.
The co-teaching?
No, with a separation, where some students are in the general ed room.
Right, separating the students based on their needs. Okay,
exactly.
Gotcha.
And so changing that paradigm was people tried to figure out how to do that well. Because it's one thing to say it's not working for students, another thing to say this is going to work better.
Yes.
And so fortunately there's some researchers, Marilyn Friend is probably the most prominent, she's I believe the University of South Carolina, or she was, who really said, okay, so how do we include students with special needs, ELL students and all students, as many students as we can, in the general education classroom to get the services, get the rich curricular experience and the peer curricular experience that they need. So co-teaching is an instructional methodology where more than one adult, more than one teacher is in the room, and depending on the day and the content and students, they're going to have varied roles. I think one of the misperceptions on co-teaching is it's two teachers, just like a comedy show, right, in front of the room, and they're trading off, and that might happen from time to time. But there are many different models of co-teaching. There's a model where students are in small groups and they're rotating through and they're all learning the same content. There's models where two teachers are actually teaching different content to half the class and then they switch, so it reduces the class size from, let's say, 22 to 11. So every student, no matter if they have needs or not, is getting a lot more teacher attention. There's models where teachers, again, students are cycling through independent work, certain teacher work. There's sometimes where the teachers are going to say, if you need help, come find me, as the students move to a work. Could be that the classroom teacher would be the curricular expert, the special educator would be the instructional expert, and they really provide strategies for one another where all students benefit from the skill set of both teachers. So I think when people have that model, they think of two teachers in front of the room, both teaching kids, and that might happen, but it's really a flexible model based on what am I teaching, what are the goals of this lesson, and where are the students today. And really the key thing is that the students are getting their content and the instruction in the general education classroom, again, for the most part. And there's more than one adult who's working with students. I was a co-teacher with Joan Zukas, who was a special educator. I was a general ed teacher in 5th and 6th grade. And we had great success, and a lot of that due to Joan. I learned a tremendous amount as a general education teacher from the skill set she did. So I felt like every day I was working with Joan, it was professional development for me as a teacher because of her strengths. And what we were able to do is provide every student, students who were well above grade level and students who were struggling, we were able to meet the needs better because we had two adults and our student-to-teacher ratio was halved. And all students had access to both of us. So separate from her official role as a special education teacher and my official role as a general education teacher, at 5th and 6th grade, sometimes some of the girls in the class really wanted to work with Joan because they were at that age where they weren't so much worried about the learning, what her role was. It was like, it was great to have that, and vice versa. And that wasn't always by gender. Sometimes it was just the way that Joan would instruct worked for a kid, and it wasn't a special needs kid. And sometimes the way I would work with a student who had special needs was really working. So we had this really great model where, yes, everyone sort of knew that her role was slightly different than mine, but every student had access to both of us.
That's really interesting because sometimes it's that interpersonal relationship that makes all the difference.
Exactly. And
then what a unique way for teachers to learn from one another.
Right. Because there's no other model where on a daily basis I'm learning live from my colleague who's in my room working with students that we share. And the other thing that I would say for me is when we were getting together to plan lessons, planning was a solitary activity for me at that point in my teaching career. And having things, even if we weren't literally together, I'd be emailing, here's what I'm thinking of doing tomorrow. She would always have suggestions and improve the lesson and vice versa. So really having that kind of second eye on things made a huge difference in the outcomes of our students and all of our students who were struggling as well as students who were performing at a very high level. Everyone was getting more attention and we were able to differentiate the curriculum so much more than if I wasn't there.
What are the challenges?
I think the challenges, our relationship developed over time. So I think like anything, any change in instructional methodology,
Pains.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And luckily we, I say this, it's going to sound like an oxymoron, but luckily we had some differences in instructional strengths, and that was great.
And
because
respect
we were
for the
learners.
differences.
And respect for the differences,
Yeah.
and an appreciation, I would say even more than respect, an appreciation of what each other could offer the students in our room. I think another challenge was, for me as a classroom teacher, it was a change in, before I co-taught, it was my classroom. I felt that way, right? And from when I started co-teaching, it was our classroom. And while that seems simple, I think for much of my career, before that, and for many teachers, it was really hinged on that this is my classroom. That was the paradigm. That's the paradigm that we went through with teacher training, and it really shifted to, I got to think about how we're going to, I mean, simple things, like how am I going to write a newsletter? You know, is it going to sign from both of us? What do kids perceive our roles to be? What do parents perceive our roles to be? So it was rethinking all those things that they're small things in theory, but they're not small things because they reinforce that they could reinforce that we're not on equal playing field. So it really did think about physical space. We changed our physical space around.
And personality. Kids might gravitate to a certain personality if they feel like that person has more authority just based on their own perception.
That's right. And I think one of the misunderstandings that I've heard from some is that you don't have to be best friends to be effective co-teachers. So I think Joan and I actually are friends, but I think it's like anything else. Anyone else you work with, you have to get a working relationship. So I think, in my opinion, the personality thing that people bring up sometimes is overdone. Yeah, because it's really it's not that people have to go out after work together. It's that people have to work effectively together.
And you have a goal.
That's
common
right.
goal.
And that's an expectation we have for all teachers. I mean, in our the expectations for teachers and administrators, Standard 4 on professional culture is all focused on how do we collaborate, how do we work together as educational professionals to benefit students. So that's a new part of our teacher standards. They used to be part of it, but it's a reflection of where the field of education is. That the kind of someone had this expression that the independent contractors who share a parking lot model of schools. It's a bad model of schools. It never worked well. It was always hinged so much on the individual, and not the benefit of the group. So we really want, we want our schools to be places where the sum total is greater than the individual parts, that we will be better working together. And that was my experience working with Joan.
That's awesome. So thinking about your position and your contribution as an assistant superintendent, what excites you about where we are and where we're headed?
I think what excites me so much is that we can both acknowledge the good work that's happening and celebrate the good work that's happening, and also strive to do better every day and every year. And I think it's hard to carry both of those, but I really do feel like superintendent leads with that in mind, that we're going to acknowledge that we've done great work, we're going to acknowledge that there's more work to do, and that both of those things can be true. And so at a meta level, it feels really affirming and very real to live in both of those worlds. So that has me excited. One thing that I'm directly involved with that also has me very excited is a new model that we came through negotiations with our Teachers Association and kicked off this year, which is really a professional development model that promotes teachers teaching other teachers. So traditional professional development models, you bring someone in, there might be a local expert, someone from Boston, someone from New York, and there's always a place for that. But what we didn't do well is we didn't have a formal system where we have incredible expertise among our teaching force.
Untapped resource.
And there was no way for them in a formal context, no structure for them to be working and teaching courses to their colleagues and peers.
When did this begin?
So this is the first year.
Oh my goodness.
There's two pathways. There's an ARPS U, which is kind of a formal, more academic, people get like college ARPS U credits. And we have PLCs, which are professional learning communities, which is a little bit lower intensity. But we now have two pathways in our first year. I think we're up to 10 courses having been offered. Our participation is well over 100 teachers at this point, and this is really only halfway through the year. So when it's just the first semester, over 100 teachers have participated in the courses that have been offered, and they range from how to teach secondary students in a heterogeneously grouped classrooms. How do you manage when the content is significant, high school? How do you manage and how do you support a diverse group of students to all get to the place we want them to get to?
And most of the teachers are internal.
So far, every single course that we've done, that's really the model, is that our teachers are leading this.
That's really neat.
So it ranges from that to getting teacher leaders ready for our transition to Google Apps next year, which is something I'm also very excited about. Working memory, thinking about, and a psychologist is leading this, thinking about working memory and its impact and how teachers can use certain strategies to support students around that, particularly at the secondary level. We have one of our principals, Nick Yaffe, leads a mindfulness course, and actually he's on stage 2 now. Me too. He's on his, because he's run through 2 cohorts, and kind of like a tier 1 course, a level 1 course, and now he's got returning people who want to go deeper, and so, I mean, it really runs the gamut of types of things. We're looking at some more for next year, looking at continuing on the equity work that has been started at staff meetings this year, but how do we provide kind of differentiation in that professional development? How do we have folks who are really eager, motivated, and want to do, even more than what we're doing with the 6 staff meetings at the elementary level? Like, how do we build that leadership and that capacity in our district? So that really excites me, because for so long, I entered the district in 2001, and I was incredibly lucky to be on the team I was on with some of the most outstanding educators that I'll ever be with. And that made me the educator, or helped make me the educator that I wanted to be, seeing their work. And yet it was like me peeking around the corner in the quad at Fort River to see what was happening on the other side. It was me, asking lots of questions and probably being quite annoying, to be candid, some of the veteran teachers about how they were doing that and how they get kids to do such great work. And so that was fine with me, but we're a significant size district. We should have formal mechanisms where we have those opportunities for teachers supposed to lead the course and be recognized for their leadership and their expertise, and as well as for other people to learn from what the excellent things that are happening. And so we don't have these, little, something that's happening in your child's classroom.
Yeah.
That teacher, that's wonderful, that teacher should have a formal opportunity to be sharing that with colleagues, and not on just a routine, not on just an ad hoc basis, but really in a more formal basis, because we do have such expertise. So that's really has me excited, because I think I've visited most, not all of the different PLCs or RTU courses, and the sense is that the people leading it know our kids. And that's always a gap. When you have someone coming from the outside, there's a lot of benefit, but one thing that's always hard is their routine job isn't working with students in the Amherst Public Schools. And it feels different when the person leading the work is actually doing the work with our kids.
Yes.
It's much more authentic, and so that has me incredibly excited. We have a great professional development committee, which is 2 members of the local association. I review applications, and it's been a joy this year.
That's awesome.
Both the process, but also the product.